Gurubhyo Namah. A very warm welcome to yet another session of Conversations on Consciousness. Today we have with us Dr. Rajeev Kurapati ji, who is joining us all the way from United States. I forgot, which city are you based, sir?
Cincinnati.
Nice.
Cincinnati.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very warm welcome to you on this program. We're very glad and grateful to have you here. Before we proceed further, let me begin with a prayer. Vakratunda Mahakaya Koti Surya Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaya Shri Rakshina Murtaye Namaha सर्वमंगलमांगल्ये शिवे सर्वार्थसाधिके शरण्ये त्र्यंबके गौरी नारायणी नमोस्तुते सदाशिवसमारंभां शंकराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरि ओम्. Again, warm welcome to you, Dr. Rajeev ji, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. Just a brief introduction for the benefit of our audience. Dr. Rajeev Kurapati ji is a medical doctor, a wellness advocate, and a spiritual guide based in USA, Cincinnati, USA, and he strives to help people live a healthy and harmonious life. And Dr. Rajeev received his medical training in Chennai, and he completed his residency in Kentucky, and later he did a fellowship in Integrative Medicine. He also holds an MBA and as well as a master's in Sanskrit, and he is also author of many books. So several of them award-winning books. So we will be discussing about his work and life in this conversation. Dr. Rajeev ji, the very first question we ask our guest is, of course, about your life journey, especially the spiritual aspect of your journey, and who were your early influencers? How did you develop interest in Vedanta? So how did this journey started? How did it proceed, and where you stand? How do you see yourself standing now currently?
Yeah. First of all, thank you, Nitinji, for inviting me to the Indica Moksha platform. It's an honor to be here. You have interviewed numerous luminaries in the past, and I'm happy to join you in this conversation. And to answer your question, I've been living in US since 2020, since 2001 actually. So it's been over 22 and a half or so years that I've been living here. I'm a medical doctor, as you said. I work as a hospitalist in Kentucky, but I'm from Andhra Pradesh. I'm from Guntur, and as you asked about my life journey, especially the spiritual journey. One side of me is interested in medicine. We all have a vritti. We all have an idea of what we might want to become in life. And at a very early age, I wanted to become a doctor. So that is one side of me. The second side, also, most of us, if not all of us, have this inquisitiveness. What is life? Where do we come from? Where do we go? Is there somebody managing this whole cosmic drama? And who is responsible for it? So these are what I call the spiritual questions. So I always had these questions growing up, and I kind of held on to them throughout my life. I didn't let go of them. Most of us get busy in our lives and let go of them and just carry on. The questions may never come back, but I held on to them. For instance, growing up, of course, in India, being a Hindu, we have so many gods. obviously, like any child, questions arise. Why are there so many gods? And what are all these gods? Where do they come from? Where do they stay? So these are all basic questions that almost all of us have. For instance, we have a prayer, very famous prayer. Karagre vasate Lakshmi, Karamadye Saraswati, Karamuletu Gauri Syad, Prabhate Karadarshanam. So our elders recommend us or instruct us as kids to wake up with an imagery of God in our palm. Before we even see the world, you visualize God forms or God names or mantras in your palm and then wake up. So what is this about? What is this three gods, Karagre, Vasate, Lakshmi, Saraswati, Gauri. So what are these kinds of gods? So things like this, these questions arise. My children ask me these questions from time to time. Sometimes they don't ask because they are scared whether to ask the question or not. But I had those questions within me, and I held on to those questions. And from time to time, I asked different people, and most of the time, the answers are, that is the tradition. You just have to have faith in them. But then as I grew up, after I crossed my 40s, after I settled in my profession and had married and had kids and everything, I had more time. I had some financial freedom. So I had more time. And then I started really pursuing those questions. And obviously, there are so many religions, so many faiths all over the world, and they all say that theirs is the true religion, true faith, and so on. But I started questioning even those faiths. And ultimately, I landed on what we call Vedanta. And there are few teachers that helped me in understanding some of the concepts in Vedanta. And that's where a lot of answers are provided in this Vedanta. It's not about religion, it's not about belief or faith, but Vedanta tells us to do three things. The way you approach is through Shruti, Yukti, Anubhuti. Shruti is the pramana, which means that the knowledge, corpus of knowledge, where you gain knowledge by reading or listening. Yukti is by using your intellect. For example, we have what is called Brahma Sutras. Brahma Sutras have tarka in them. There's a lot of analysis, a lot of mental, using your mind, using your mental, tools to understand the knowledge that we studied from the Vedas. So Shruti, Yukti, and Anubhuti. Unless you have experience, everything becomes like any textbook knowledge. I can quote as many slokas, Sanskrit slokas from various texts, or some Vedas, or Puranas, or Itihasas, or Upanishads, and they don't really make sense unless the person has the experience of it. So I went through these. I understood that most of us actually have what is called Advaya Anubhuti, or the kind of non-dual experiences, when we are at awe of nature and we lose ourselves. That's actually a glimpse into the nature of reality, nature of Brahman, or nature of oneness. We sometimes feel like we are one with the scenery, right? We lose the sense of ego. So that is that Anubhuti. But unless you question who is experiencing it and then go to the root of it, and you see Ramana Maharshi behind me. So he is one of the luminaries who actually helped us frame the right question. Who am I? Most of us ask the question, how am I? Right? How are you? Right? How are you doing? Which, when you turn it inwards, it becomes how am I doing? In other words, how are my finances? How is my family? How are my kids? How is my health? This is all how questions. But then we forget to ask the question, who am I? how am I is totally different from who am I, right? Why is this important? Because unless we understand who am I, you cannot have a how am I that is a fulfilling life experience.
Hmm.
So, in other words, having these questions, holding on to them, asking the right people who have the patience, the titiksha, the kshama, titiksha, the compassion, the patience to answer these questions. I was lucky to have some of the teachers that I will, I'll name a few as I move along, who actually helped me with so much love and compassion, direct me to the right source and make me understand the meaning of the experiences that we have. So
Have you
that is
formally
my,
studied Vedanta under these teachers?
yeah. So as part of the MA in Sanskrit, we have formal study of Vedanta, Vedas, Upanishads, and so on. So that is the one part of the study. The second is um, Dr. Karanam Aravindarao. So he's a retired IPS officer, worked as DGP. So he had done PhD in Vedanta. So he helped me understand many of the um, concepts in Vedanta in a proper way, going back to the actual root text like Upanishads and Brahma Sutras, and also what we call Prakarana Granthas by Viveka Chudamani, uh, Panchadashi, Driktrishya Viveka, Aparokshanabhuti. These are called secondary texts which help you understand a certain aspects of the Vedanta, especially Advaita Vedanta. So these one teacher is Karanam Aravindarao ji. The second teacher is Swami Tattvavidananda, who I think you interviewed in the past. So
Yes.
Swami Tattvavidananda, he's a fearless monk, I should say, and he would actually dispel a lot of doubts that we have in Vedanta and go to the root of the core of the Vedanta. So these are my main two teachers who help me understand who are the Pratyaksha gurus, and the gurus that the lineage of gurus like Vidyaranya was one guru, Shankaracharya, Adi Shankaracharya, other gurus. So these are all the gurus that we look for any clarification. For example, Bhagavad Gita, you go to Shankara Bhashya and find out, he has, Adi Shankaracharya has written numerous Prakarana Granthas, numerous stotras. In fact, um, Dakshinamurti Stotram, which I've recently translated, it is one of the stotras written by Adi Shankaracharya. So I follow Adi Shankara's teachings, and I refer to these other gurus that I mentioned to clarify any doubts. And of course, unless you understand who you are, who am I, there is no everything else, all the knowledge that we read in the master's program or from these Prakarana Granthas is just becomes textbook knowledge. It doesn't make much sense unless you go to the root of who we are, the self, the self with the big S. And the guru that helps us, or at least helped me, is Ramana Maharshi, who helped frame the right question, go directly to the root of who am I, and from there understand um, what it is, what all this about. So when we look at these gurus, as ultimately it comes to three things: who am I, what is this Jagat, and who is responsible for these two, right? Brahman, Jagat, and Jiva. So if we can understand the relationship between these three, then you got to the root of it. So that is my background.
Wonderful, wonderful, Dr. Rajiv. I think to have that clarity, it needs very careful, very patient, and dedicated engagement, and not just a
Right,
superficial reading. I think
right.
that is very visible when I went through your book as well. The latest one, the Unveiling Maya, the translation hidden insights into Dakshinamurti Stotram. And it's always refreshing to look at modern works on our Shastra tradition. uh, Often in my personal experience, I often become kind of unsatisfied with modern works in general, because I always prefer a traditional, a purist take, you could say, in a sense,
Yeah,
on the Shastra, uh, to understand the Shastra. I mean, we can
right,
always contextualize them, but still, I would say that I really enjoyed the portions that I read, that I skimmed through your book. When I read it, I really enjoyed it, and I found it very wonderfully presented, very wonderfully. Concepts have been very logically presented, wonderfully presented, and my thoughts about that book already. But
right.
anyway, so I want to ask you, my next question would be on your book itself. So about this commentary on, and specifically Dakshinamurti Stotram. I mean, Shankaracharya has written many Stotram, has written many Prakarana Granthas.
Correct.
So how did you first become interested in this Stotram? And what made you choose this Stotram for your book subject matter? So what was it? Why this and not something else? So do
Yeah.
shed light on that.
So, yeah, great. Thank you for the feedback, Nitinji, on the book itself. So this is the book that Nitinji is talking about, Unveiling Maya, Dakshinamurti Stotram. The reason why I picked, see, this is a very small stotram. The word stotram comes from the root word stuti, right? So you stuti, you praise the Lord. So that is what stotram in Western translation becomes. So praise the Lord is the English or a Christian way of stuti to their Lord. But whenever we talk about stotra in Indic traditions or Indic wisdom traditions, Indian or Sanatana dharmic or any dharmic, in fact, any dharmic, Buddhism, Sikhism, Jainism, Hindu, whatever dharmic traditions, you look at stotram, there is praising the divinity, praising the divine aspect of it, and also there is a philosophy behind it. That is what attracted me to this stotram. So you have, for example, Vishnu Sahasranama Stotram, right? So that is also a stotram, right? So it's stuti. So you are praising the God through 1000 names. So that is one type of stotram. And in this stotram, see, I'll read out the first, there are only 10 verses here. I'll read out the first verse and try to translate very briefly. And with that, you'll get the idea why I picked this. And I'm always philosophically oriented. Again, I'm always asking the questions, who am I? What is my purpose? What is my relationship with the Jagat? And how am I related to the entity that is responsible for the Jiva and the Jagat, right? So it goes like this. विश्वं दर्पणदृश्यमाननगरीतुल्यं निजान्तर्गतम् पश्यन्नात्मनि मायया बहिरिवोद्भूतं यथा निद्रया यः साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयम् तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नम इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये. So you see, of course, the beauty of the words itself. Vishwam darpana drushyamana nagari tulyam nijantargatam means the universe is like a city seen in a mirror, and this whole thing is within you. So it is the whole universe is actually, he doesn't use the word Maya, but the next word, Pashyannatmani Mayaya, Atmani Mayaya, perceiving this illusion or the Maya in oneself as though it emerged as outside. So the whole world is within you, and it is projecting as this entire universe outside. If you go to the root of this I-ness within you, you'll understand the world that is outside. So you see, it is as if it is a stotram praising Dakshinamurti, but it has so much philosophy within it. It is saying that the world you are seeing outside is a projection of your own inner self. And what is this inner self? He's not talking about the ego self, the Rajiv, the Dr. Rajiv here, or the Nitinji there. So he's saying, go beyond that ego self, you will get to the root of it, and from that root, the world is projected outside. That is the world you are seeing. So you get to this kind of deep philosophy if you understand from the right context. So if you just read it, it may not make sense. But if you actually go word by word and understand the Sanskrit meaning of it, it makes a lot more sense. Because I have studied Sanskrit, I felt that, and the beauty of the words that Adi Shankara uses, and also the deep philosophy within it, made me get attracted to this stotram. And of course, there are many other slokas, like Bhagavad Gita itself is a beautiful kavyam. It is a beautiful song, right? So, for example, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Bhagavad Gita says, Arjuna says to Krishna, ask Krishna, Sthita Prajnasya ka bhasha, Samadhistasya Keshava, Sthita Dhihi, Kim Prabhasheta, Kimasita, Vrajeta Kim. So you see these, I'm just attracted both to the philosophy behind it and the language part of it. And that is why I have chosen the Dakshinamurti Stotram as my first translation. I'm actually now translating Bhagavad Gita also. Hopefully it'll come out in about 6 months or so. And that, I guess that answers your question, Ji.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, follow up to that, what made you choose the format of a commentary? I mean, you
Okay.
know, commentary is the main format in traditional approaches. I think there are many Sanskrit commentaries on Dakshinamurti Stotram as well.
Correct.
Uh, but that is not the how the modern authors, contemporary authors, usually approach Hindu
Correct.
texts. Usually, it is more about application, contextualization, and
Correct.
perhaps their own interpretation, such as my version of this book and such things. So, why commentary, and how? What are some unique features of your commentary? And perhaps you could also give a background about the existing Sanskrit commentaries on the Dakshinamurti Stotram, some
Correct.
important aspects of it, and how your commentary differs from it, or should be understood in the larger context of the commentary tradition.
Yeah, great question. Thank you for asking that. So, in one of the chapters, actually, chapter 4 of this book, I have listed all the commentaries. The most commonly or the famous commentary is by Shureshwaracharya, the direct disciple of Adi Shankara. He gives the commentary with a name called Manasollasa. Manasollasa is the name of the Sureshwaracharya's commentary on Dakshinamurti Stotram. As you know, Dakshinamurti Stotram was composed by Adi Shankara. His direct disciple wrote Manasollasa, and it is an extensive commentary. It is called Vartika. See, if you look at the way a stotram or a slokam is interpreted, for example, Upanishads are interpreted in many different formats. So what we use as a commentary is a very loose word that we use in English. But if you go to our literature, Sanskrit literature, you will see numerous formats of explaining those mantras or slokas or stotras. What Sureshwaracharya did is he gave an extensive commentary, and that is called Vartika. So it is called Sureshwaracharya's Vartika.
I think you could just briefly elaborate the difference
Yeah,
between, say, Bhashya, Vartika, Tika, Tippani, Vivarana as well.
yeah.
You know, these
So
terms.
yeah, yeah. So Bhashyam is direct uh, interpretation of word to word interpretation, and also giving, see, for example, there are big samasas in Sanskrit words. Samasas is a combination of words. So they break it up and explain it. That is bhashya. So it is more or less concise, but if you look at Adi Shankara's bhashyam, they are actually very extensive. And if you take it a higher level, it becomes Vartika. Vartika, you actually borrow numerous references from various sources and actually explain, clarify the concept. So it becomes Vartika. Tippani is notes. In Tippani means it's very simple explanation. Tippani becomes notes. If I take notes and put it in the form of book, it becomes Tippani. So yeah, Vartika, Bhashya, Tippani. What other formats do we have?
I think Tika and Vivarana.
Oh yeah. Tika is actually the notes. Tika is the notes. Tippani is also a short form of the Bhashyam. Explaining the Bhashyam in simple terms becomes Tippani, and then Tika is actually notes. You actually see in many Sanskrit books, uh, Tika is very popular because it is the most easy to understand explanation of the bhashya. In,
We have
for
Anandagiri
example,
Tika on
Anandagiri
Shankara.
Tika, Shankaracharya, Anandagiri Tika. So most of it, so Tika is written on somebody's bhashyam usually. You take, so you have the main text, you have the bhashyam, you have elaborate vartika, you have another format called tippani, and you have easy to understand notes called tika. So these are some of the formats that we have. So the way I did is more or less a tika, uh, because I'm not a scholar of Sanskrit to write a bhashya like Adi Shankaracharya. So what I do is I listen, I read, uh, I listen to the modern contemporary teachers like um, Tattvavidananda Saraswati and so on. And I also read Manasollasa, and there is there is English version. There is, I think, there is a Telugu version of it too. At least I can understand the Telugu version of it. And then we have, moving on to who all wrote the commentaries on it. So the second one that is popular, first we talked about Manasollasa. The second is Tattva Sudha. Tattva Sudha was written by a Swami called Swami Swayam Prakashananda. He also wrote detailed commentaries, and he explores the Stotram's teachings from a much deeper level. So that is the Tattva Sudha. And then there is a third commentary or notes which combines both Manasollasa and Tattva Sudha, and that was written by a person named Dr. D.S. Subbaramaya.
Yes.
It was published by Sringeri Mutt. So these are the three main things. Of course, numerous others have written on this. Contemporary teachers like Swami Harshananda has written. He is from Ramakrishna order, Ramakrishna Mutt. So that is Swami Harshananda wrote a commentary on Dakshinamurti Stotram. Swami Chinmayananda also wrote one. So numerous other scholars, but these are the most popular ones. So the way I did is I took the Sanskrit version, I did a padacheda, which is breaking down the complex samasa, and I wrote word to word meaning of the stotram, and then I put it together into an easy to understand notes or I would say commentary for a contemporary reader, but with references going back to the Manasollasa and Tattvasudha. So I used, see, the thing is, I studied in a traditional way. And I also understand how the modern, see, my kids, they don't know Sanskrit. So if I have to explain to them, my kids are very young. If I have to explain to them, I have to come down to a level that they can understand. I cannot go to Manasollasa and Brahma Sutras and explain to them, right? So I have to come down. So this book was written both for a student of Sanskrit and also a contemporary reader. I want them to give access to the beauty of the philosophy in it. If I go at a high level Sanskrit, they may not understand it. And if I go at a much uh, very contemporary modern approach where some of these authors who don't study Sanskrit or who don't study under traditional teachers, they explain it whatever kapola kalpana comes to their mind, whatever comes to their
Lot of
mind.
dilution happens.
A lot
Dilution
of
happens.
dilution happens, and so you lose the beauty of it, and you don't know what kind of adhikari they are. You don't know what kind of spiritual maturity they have. So if you start reading those books, you may get misled. So I wanted to stay true to the tradition and also true to the contemporary mind. That is how the book came out. So if you look at the book, it will say word to word breakdown, meaning, and brief commentary. But by brief, I mean few pages of commentary becomes brief, right? So that is the structure of the book.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think, the book serve a great need, of
Yeah.
bridging the gap. So,
Correct.
and I think I personally, as an author as well, I think it's very, very important to take the teachings of the Shastras to the contemporary audience, but without any dilution. So, with
Correct.
simplicity, but authenticity as well. So,
Right.
it's always uh, you know, a struggle for an author
Challenge.
to,
Correct.
yeah, challenge to how to balance whether give more importance to simplifying the things or whether give more
Yeah.
importance to authentic presentation. So it's always a challenge.
Correct.
So what are the challenge did you face during this book? I mean, are there
Yeah.
any other issues, any particularly uh, troublesome obstacles you faced while writing this book?
Yeah. So what happens when you write these type of books is because they only address one aspect of the entire corpus of knowledge I mean, it is, see, before doing the MA, the Masters in Sanskrit, I thought I knew a lot. But after doing Masters in Sanskrit, then I knew I know only a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of what is available. So unless you study in a proper, structured, and a systematic way, you don't understand the scope of knowledge in it. So my one of the challenges I had was anytime you talk about Maya and Brahman, there is so much that goes into it, right? And how do you put everything into a concise book? That is the biggest challenge that you probably face the same thing. When I understand you're writing a book on Dharma Shastras, and now, and I hope it's coming out soon. And when you pick up a topic such as Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya Jivo Brahma Hivanaparaha, how do you put that into a language when most of that is experiential, right? So you have to actually understand something that is beyond language, that is beyond expression, and then bring it out into language and put it on paper and expect that the reader would understand the way you envisioned it. So that that is the challenge that I'm sure that is the challenge that most readers face. And especially when you're talking about Advaita Vedanta. For example, Vidyaranya, who wrote
Panchadashi.
Panchadashi, right? It is a Prakarana Grantha on Advaita Vedanta. He explains, Chodyam va pariharo va kriyatam dvaita bhashaya. Advaita bhashaya chodyam nasti, na api taduttaram. Which means, it is only when you are talking in dualities there is language. But when you are in that state of non-dual experience, there is no language to express it. So how do you even say it out that it is non-dual experience? So that when you are touching concepts such as Advaita Vedanta and Brahman and Maya and Jagat and Jiva and things like that, that is where the challenge comes to express that this, and that is why there are so many Prakarana Granthas. That is why Adi Shankara wrote so many to explain one sentence: Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha. I face the same challenge like most other writers of Advaita Vedanta face.
And that reference to Panchadashi, it reminds to mind Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, the Yajnavalkya, Maitreyi conversation, I think, if
Uh-huh.
I'm not mistaken. He speaks
Right.
about, I forgot the exact Sanskrit verse. Basically, it says the same thing about Yatra vid Dvaita Bhavati. Where there
Mm-hmm.
is duality, itaram nasti. When there is no duality, who to speak, who is you speaking, yeah.
Right, right. The same thing, exactly the same thing. Um,
Excellent.
so that is the challenge that you face when you are touching these concepts, and there is the risk, you are taking the risk of miscommunicating to the readers if you don't stick with the proper format, or if you don't stick with, and if you start writing whatever comes to your mind, you are actually doing a disservice to the reader by projecting something that they may misunderstand. That is why it's important we stick to a certain format. I mean, of course, there should be some liberty to the author, right? So, author has to have some liberty to express his own voice within the book. So, I try to put my voice in there, but sticking to the tradition and trying to make sure that the message is conveyed in the right way.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I think, the book has come out very wonderfully.
Thank
And
you.
so one of the chapters you mentioned about how Vedanta is a path to dynamic spiritual enlightenment. So
Right.
I found this phrase, dynamic spiritual enlightenment together, very
Correct.
fascinating. So can you explain what exactly do you mean by this dynamic spiritual
Right.
enlightenment? Yeah.
Yeah. See, this is where the communication becomes important. So most people think Vedanta means passivity, like you're not engaging with the world. You're just sitting there and being a monk, meditating and things like that. So the opposite of that is becoming dynamic and getting involved in the world. But as Krishna explains to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita, you engage with the world, but don't get attached to the results of it. You do your karma like a karma yogi. So that is the essence of Vedanta, actually. You, because nobody can sit quiet. You have to do something or the other in this world, right? Even monks have to do something. Even Vedantins have to do something or the other. So you cannot sit quiet. This was also explained to Arjuna by Krishna. But when you engage in the world, you obviously look for a goal. Like everybody has a certain, even monks have a certain goal to reach something, to achieve something. But in a mundane material world, Vedanta tells us you do your job, you don't get attached to the result, because everybody says this, right? What does that really mean? So I kind of held on to it and questioned, what does this idea of don't get attached to the result mean? What did Krishna actually tell Arjuna when he said this? The way I try to internalize it for myself and I try to explain it, no matter what you do, you will get a result, positive or negative. From that result, you do something else, right? So for instance, I came to US. I wanted to achieve something. I achieved it, but it didn't stop there. So I got the result. Now I have to do something with it. So I started working here. The visas, the green cards, the citizenships, all the things that go with it, the travel, and then the marriages that go on here, and then the children, lack of social support. So you think that you have achieved something by attaining your goal. The moment you achieve that goal, a new goal is waiting for you. A new task is waiting for you. This is never ending. So the Swami Tattvavidananda Saraswati calls it the noodle effect. You start pulling out one thing after another, it never stops till the noodle ends, which means till our life ends. So we are always jumping from goal to goal, post to post in our life. If you keep attaching to every goal that you have achieved or not achieved, you are adding more and more burden to your mind, and you are bound to get burnt out. And so Krishna tells Arjuna, this is inevitable. The goal, achieving the goal, not achieving the goal is not important. What is more important is the journey that you go through. So don't just keep going, keep going with the journey. And that is why they gave us a formula, dharma, artha, kama, moksha. So with the moksha in mind, you carry on your goal. So these going to Americas, getting a job, losing a job, getting a new job, getting married, having relationship problems, getting children, dealing with them, or not having children and suffering because of not having children and having 100 problems because of the children. This is a never ending process. So you go through this entire life like getting on a giant wheel, and you start yelling, help me, help me, help me, as the wheel is rotating fast. Nobody is going to come to your rescue. The moment giant wheel stops, you simply get down. That is the end of life, I mean. So we got into the giant wheel called life, and then we start yelling, somebody help me, I'm in trouble, somebody help me. It's not going to happen. So Krishna says, just don't focus on the goals, because the goals come and go. Focus on the who you are, the ultimate reality. That will take you to the path of sthita pragnata. So that is the ultimate goal. So I think, what was your question, Nitinji?
I I think your answer was so very fascinating that you also forgot the question.
Yeah,
What was
I was lost in my own. I was just reveling in my own answer, and it's just a fact, because these are practical things. I can quote any number of scriptures or Bhagavad
No,
Gita or whatever.
we were speaking
Yeah.
about Vedanta as a dynamic
Oh,
spiritual.
dynamic spiritualism.
Yes, yes, yes.
So this is the dynamic part of it. Unless you understand life in totality and become an active participant in it and not a passive observer in it. Of course, Vedanta tells that you become an observer. That is a different aspect of it. I'm talking about the phenomenal world, and you watch it like you are watching a movie, right? So you are engaged in the movie, but then from time to time you remind yourself, this is just a movie. Don't get too carried away. Don't take the illusion too seriously. So if you take this world, which is illusion, again, the word illusion is an English term, but mithya is the better term for it, or the maya is a better term. Mithya is not illusion, it is different, right? So which means that anirvachaniya, maya is anirvachaniya. You cannot explain it. It has both real and unreal qualities to it. So don't get too carried away by this illusion, because it's like a movie. or it's like watching a match in the stadium. You go in there and watch the cricket or whatever soccer match, sport, and you get lost in the game and you start running your emotions up and down till the game ends, and you come out and say, oh, it's just a game. Same is with the life. The life is just like a cosmic drama, Leela. So don't get lost in it. So this is dynamic Vedanta. So people think that when I quote sloka, when people quote slokas and talk about where, oh, he's talking Vedanta, which is almost dismissive, right? Which is almost saying it's not relevant to practical life. But it is very relevant. But you have to understand it in a proper way. That is what all these great gurus are saying. Ramana Maharshi, Adi Shankaracharya, Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, these people are actually not talking about passivity. They're talking about nahi kaschit ksharamapi jatu tishtatya akarma krut karyate hyavashah karma sarva prakriti jair gunaihi. Nahi kaschit ksharamapi jatu tishtatya akarma krut. Not even a single moment in your life you will be sitting quietly. You will be doing something or the other. And those actions that you do are influenced by your gunas, sattva, rajas, tamo gunas. So depending on what guna predominates at that moment, you will do that. So that is what Krishna is saying. So see, Krishna is saying Vedanta in Bhagavad Gita, but he's giving so much practical wisdom. That is why it becomes practical Vedanta.
Oh, wonderful. I like this phrase, dynamic spiritual enlightenment. I will
Right,
be
right.
using it in future.
Yeah,
Uh,
please do. Yeah,
so,
don't get lost in this illusion too. Don't take this illusion too
illusion
seriously.
seriously. Yeah, yeah. Nice, nice. You're good at this. So, moving forward, uh, so as a medical practitioner as well as a spiritual seeker, do you keep do you find these are two separate buckets? Do you keep them as a separate buckets, or do you find them to be harmoniously integrated, overlapping with each other? And if it is so like that, how has your pursuit of Vedanta, your spiritual pursuit or your spiritual aspect of your life, how has it influenced your profession as a medical doctor? Has
Yeah,
it influence been positive or negative or
yeah,
life changing? How has it been?
yeah. Yeah, great question. Thank you for asking Nitinji this question. See, earlier on, I started saying there are two questions that we all of us face. One is how am I? Second is who am I? Unless we understand the who am I, this how am I, which means that how am I doing health wise, physically and mentally, because life from time to time throws curveballs at us. We get sick, we get diseases, we get heart attacks, strokes, kidney diseases, or infections, high blood pressure, diabetes. I see all these patients. People who have this kind of mental equilibrium, they deal with their life challenges in a much more effective way. People who are spiritually inclined are actually physically healthier. And you may say some of these gurus or some of these swamijis, they're so lazy, they are so obese, they have all these health problems and so on. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about regular men and women, common man, who is spiritually inclined, who has understood the meaning of life. They actually serve others and themselves, right? And I have, from time to time, when I see my patients, this is what I tell them. Make sure that you have a purpose in life and understand, make sure that you have philosophy in life, your own philosophy in life, and align your physical life around it. So when we go through medical school, when we become doctors, it is all about matter, right? It is all about skin, bone, tissues, blood pressure, heart rate, breathing, lungs, so brain, kidneys. right? So it is all matter. We don't talk about spirit in medicine. So we don't. So when we talk about spirit, they kind of look at us as if I'm kind of a quackery, because that is not Western science talks about. So, but that is only one aspect of our totality. So, physical being is one aspect of it. When I'm a doctor, when I put my doctor hat, cap, I'm addressing one aspect of a human life, which is the physical aspect of it. But I also bring my own spirituality into it by giving them guidance in terms of service, in terms of patience, compassion, love. These are all not, they don't teach you these in medical school. Love, compassion, none of those, service, none of this comes in medical school. We just go directly to, when we start off in our medical college, first year, they throw us in a dissection room where we start dissecting human body, right? The day one, we start dissecting cadavers. So that's the entire 1 year we dissect cadaver. Second year, we go to the actual person. After we have understood the dead person, we go to the real person and start checking them out. And so this is the physical aspect of it. So as a medical doctor who has all this Vedantic knowledge or yeah, Vedantic knowledge or training or experience, it has only immensely served me in my own journey as a medical doctor. In fact, I feel that no matter who you are, you could be an engineer, you could be an actor, you could be a doctor, you could be a movie maker, a writer, you could be a housemaker, whoever you are. This spiritual knowledge or Vedantic knowledge it will only help you in having a fulfilling life. So, yeah, to make the answer very short, so this actually completed my uh, training as a doctor or becoming a better doctor, having spiritual or Vedantic experience and knowledge made me a better doctor.
Wonderful, excellent. I think the best part about Vedanta is about anchoring. It provides a philosophical, ontological anchoring to one's life and ethical
Right.
anchoring as well.
Yeah.
And that is the function of our Shastras as a whole, not just Vedanta.
Right. Right.
That it roots us, gives us a world view through which we can, the very perspective and approach the world, the issues changes from a, one who is not exposed to the
Exposed to
teachings of
it.
the Shastras. Yeah,
Yeah,
wonderful.
yeah. That is very true, Nitinji. So let me add a small thing here. When I was growing up in 90s, there was a movement towards globalization. We used to talk about, even now we talk about it, globalization, globalization. Only after I came to US and lived here for a couple decades, I realized that it is westernization, not globalization. What we think of globalization is not, you're not becoming a global citizen by becoming global, by in the name of globalization. You are actually becoming westernized and losing touch with our own corpus of knowledge. And what I felt was you should have both. You should have the best of both worlds. And in fact, if you are, to use your own word, if you're anchored in your own core philosophy, you actually become better at the material side of the world, or you don't need to become westernized. You retain your roots and you learn and share the knowledge of what is, like for instance, Americans are learning, or Westerners are learning yoga, right? Yoga and meditate, pranayama and meditation and so on. So unfortunately, we are learning all the bad stuff from the West and giving them the good stuff. So we are we are losing, and they have to tell us yoga is good for you, and then we listen to them. So this is the unfortunate part of it. So it is unrelated to the question you mentioned, but then it's part of my life experience that when be careful under the garb of globalization, you are becoming westernized and losing touch with your own roots. So Vedanta or in fact, any philosophy, yeah, that is rooted in Indian knowledge systems. My next book is coming out. I actually signed a contract with a big publisher coming out next year on Shad Darsanas. Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Yoga, Purva Mimamsa, and Uttara Mimamsa, which is Upanishad or Vedanta. So Nyaya and Vaisheshika, Sankhya and Yoga. So these are all beautiful philosophies which we completely lost touch with. I only studied them as part of my master's in Sanskrit, and I studied more after my master's so that I appreciate and share that knowledge. So I became more globalized in the sense that I now am rooted in our darshanas, and at the same time I'm a medical doctor who has Western medical training. So that is so much more fulfilling, and there is nothing more I can ask in this life than a combination of these two. And doing masters in Sanskrit immensely helped, because rather than depending on somebody else's translation, you can actually go to the Sanskrit text and directly understand it. You may not become a scholar in Sanskrit, but at least you will appreciate the beauty of or at least you'll say it the right way, so at least some knowledge. You don't need to do MA in Sanskrit. At least some basic understanding is important.
Wonderful. I think we have had a very fruitful discussion, Rajiv ji. And as we come to a conclusion towards the end of the session, I want to end it with the question, very, very core question. I think this could have been the very initial question itself. So we have been speaking about the Dakshinamurti Stotram and your book on it. So let me end with this final question about who Dakshinamurti is, and how do you see it? How is it presented in the Vedanta tradition? But even otherwise, who is this deity? Who is this Devata?
Right.
Who is this Ishvara called Dakshinamurti? And what are the significant features? I mean, there are, of course, many different Devatas, but each Devata has its own Rupa, its own Tattva, which is
Yeah.
makes it unique. Though same Parabrahma manifests as all Devatas, but still each form, each aspect is unique. So do highlight
Yeah.
on this.
Oh, beautiful question. I'm glad you asked this question. In fact, I write extensively about this in the very first chapter. So, Dakshinamurti is a form of Shiva, Lord Shiva. And it is not, you don't find the term Dakshinamurti in the Vedas. This is in some of the later Agami texts, and we hear Dakshinamurti from Adi Shankara. The word, this is the standard explanation of the Dakshinamurti, the Vedantic explanation by the scholars. And I'll tell you my vision of Dakshinamurti. Dakshinabhimuka Murti. Dakshinabhimuka Murti. The one who faces south. Dakshina. Um, Dakshinabhimuka Murti is Dakshinamurti. Let me go over that real quick. Here, yeah, the one who faces south, Dakshinabhimuka Murti, Dakshinamurti. That is one explanation. The second explanation is even more interesting. Dakshinascha Amurtischa, Dakshinamurti. That is another explanation. So, one is the deity who is facing south. So, why south? South is considered the direction of death, right? So south is in our philosophy, south is considered the direction of south. So that is why they say don't sleep facing south, because that is the direction of south, the direction of Yama, or the direction of death. But here there are few explanations why Dakshinamurti why the Dakshinabhimuka Murti becomes important. One is he is facing the students who are facing him, right? So he's not actually facing death. He's actually facing the students who are facing north, which is him, which is facing him. So the students are actually the aged sages, the wise sages facing him, and he's explaining to them all the knowledge, he's imparting knowledge in silence. So that is one explanation of Dakshina Murti, Dakshinabhimukha Murti. Second explanation is Dakshinascha Asau Amurtischa, which means Dakshina here is you take the Anvaya as Dakshaha. Dakshaha means the one who is competent, the one who is who has mastered. Dakshaha is also explained as Siddha. Siddha, the one who has enlightened, who is enlightened, who has wisdom. So he is Dakshaha or Dakshina. Dakshina is taken as Dakshaha, the person, and also the formless person who is the Daksha. That is Dakshinamurti. See, earlier
Daksha can also mean one who is competent to do the
competent.
Srishti, Sthiti, Laya,
Correct.
the creation, sustenance, and destruction, right?
That is correct. Yeah. So Dakshaha means one who is competent. Competent in what? In manifesting this world, sustaining it, and dissolving it. So you see, for example, if you see some of the Vartikas, they will go to the Upanishads and give references for Dakshaha. Yato va imani bhutani jayante, ena jatani jivanti, yat prayanti, abhisam vishanti. The one who creates, one who sustains, one who dissolves. So that is Dakshaha or Parabrahman. So that is Dakshinamurti. And in this second explanation, Dakshinascha Asau Amurtischa, that formless supreme being, that is the Dakshinamurti. So in the earlier form, in the earlier explanation, we have the form, that is the guru who is facing the students and explaining. In the second explanation, we are being told that Dakshinascha Asau Amurtischa, the formless one, that formless one who is responsible for this entire creation, that is Dakshinamurti. So these are the standard ones given. So to me, Dakshinamurti is both. Dakshinamurti is Murti and Amurti for me. Because the Amurti part is that Brahman, the supreme being, who is responsible, the supreme consciousness, and the Murti form is the one that I can quickly, easily relate to. You know, I can say, hey, Dakshinamurti is with me all the time. That is the Murti form of it. So that is the Dakshina, that is the explanation of the Dakshinamurti. And this, actually, if you spend some time on this, there is a lot of Vedanta in it. Because they're talking about, see, some religions defame Sanatana Dharma or Hinduism by saying that you are idol worshippers, right? They say that you are idol worship. We don't eat your prasadam offered to your idols, because our religion does not agree or does not give permission to take anything that is offered to the idols. See, idol is Murti, right? Murti is the idol. But in the Murti, the inner meaning, there is an Amurti in that. So if you only look at one aspect of it, it becomes an idol. But if you look at the big picture, there is an Amurti within the Murti. So that is how I see Dakshinamurti.
I think that's a wonderful way to put it. That tattva that inhabits the murti is amurti.
Correct. That real tattva. You have to grasp that tattva. Just don't go on holding on to the murti. But you can do that. That is the stage one. But you go to the tattva. Perfect.
Wonderful, Dr. Rajiv. It was a very fulsome conversation, I would say. Excellent conversation. Thank you for making time for this session, and congratulations and all the best for this book as well as your upcoming books on Shaddarshanas and others. I eagerly look forward to reading those books as well. So thank you very much.
Likewise, Nitinji. So you also have written books. I have read some of your books, and you are coming up with an important book on Dharma Shastras. I'm also looking forward to reading that book and learning from it. So I think people like you and me, regardless of what our vritti is, our pravrutti lifelong journey of making sure that these um, gems, this knowledge, heritage that we have to continue to spread it, make, and also clarify the myths that have been propagated over the past hundreds of years. So thank you for the opportunity and also spending time and asking such beautiful questions. It's always nice to talk to someone who actually has the knowledge and understand what the topic is and have some expertise on the topic. So I'm grateful for that.
Wonderful, Dr. Rajiv, and hopefully we could do more sessions with you in the coming future. So with this, we come to a conclusion of this session. I request all our viewers to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for announcements about our upcoming events. With this, we conclude. Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha.
Rubio Nama. Thank you.